Ready graphics? Ready theme? Cue back.
Good evening. For your information tonight.
Hi, I'm Jessie Mullins.
And I'm Lauren Milberger.
And this is FYI,
the Murphy Brown Podcast.
I love my nerdy little dorks.
Let's hope that Frank has furniture now.
She leads with her teeth. I love it.
Smell me. I smell like Chanel.
Yeah.
Rive gauche.
This is a big thumbs up from Lauren.
Mr. Buck Henry. And on today's episode,
we'll be talking about Season 1, Episode 17, My Dinner with Einstein. It's Lauren.
Hey, it's Jessie.
And it's really hot in New York City.
It's so hot right now, you guys. We're really sad. Just so you know, for you, we have sacrificed the background noise of my fan and air conditioner.
Yeah.
For your listening experience.
We do this for you.
This is for your ear holes, not our bodies.
So today's episode is directed by Barnett Kellman.
What?
No.
Stop it.
Yeah. It's written by Gary Danzig and someone named Steven Peterman.
You may have met him with us.
Yes, and if you haven't, you should go back and listen to our interview with Steven.
He's delightful. And we'll have thoughts of his today throughout the episode.
We will, yes. Thank you, Steve, for sending us all your thoughts. Mm-hmm. But now it's time to read the bio of Gary Danzig.
Let's talk about Gary.
Let's introduce you to Gary.
This is, now when we talk about the book, this is from Murphy Brown, Anatomy of a Sitcom, by Robert S. Alley and Irby B. Brown, which we have talked about before. And this is Gary's bio.
From about 1990, right?
Indeed. Okay, so Gary Danzig. The son of a Russian princess and an Indonesian chiropractor, Gary spent his formative years between Bukittinggi and Brooklyn. I apologize for me mispronouncing that, everyone. His earliest desire, other than suckling, was to be a doctor. After scraping his knee and seeing blood, he reassessed his goals. A degree in broadcast journalism from the American University in Washington, D.C., and graduate work at New York University led Gary into a modestly successful careers as a photographer, a potter, and an actor. But his life suddenly changed in the mid-1980s when, as an out-of-work, slightly depressed, very angry actor, he encountered Steven Peterman at the Temple of the Body, the Sports Connection. Hallelujah! Praise be the Sports Connection! For the fruits of that meeting and the remainder of his bio, please turn to the writing of the Blessed One, Steven Peterman. Gary Danzig is my Patronus. I love him so much.
It might be one of my favorite bios so far.
I just really appreciate it. And if you're looking at the book, everyone, the next bio is Steven Peterman's.
Of course, because side by side.
Very, very smart compilation there.
Yeah, so this episode aired March 20th, 1989.
So the title of the episode, My Dinner with Einstein, is a play on the movie My Dinner with Andre, which, fun fact, stars Wallace Shawn, a highly lauded character actor who also comes into Murphy Brown in a little while.
And directed by someone named Louis Malle.
Oh, you may have heard of them.
Who was married to Candice Bergen.
Indeed. It's a great movie. It's 1981. It's definitely what we talk about as a dramedy. It features Andre Gregory, Andre, and Wallace Shawn, Wally, as fictionalized versions of themselves having a conversation. I definitely recommend just renting it and watching it. It's brilliant. What it makes me think of is that now we have kind of a modern version of it in The Trip.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant. You're right.
Yeah,
we do.
That's exactly what it made me think of when I thought of this movie. I was like, oh, The Trip.
I love The Trip.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. But it's sad. It's a play on this and these conversations.
Yeah. The Trip is a British film, if anyone is unaware.
Yes, and actually has 2 sequels.
I always think of My Dinner with Andre because it's one of my favorite jokes at the end of Waiting for Guffman.
It is. Oh.
Because it is a many-layered joke.
It really is.
If anyone is unaware, I'm not spoiling the movie, but he has action figures for Dinner with Andre because they sit almost the entire time. Yeah. And so I loved the layerness of that joke.
The only action is that their hips are movable.
Yeah.
I think Waiting for Guffman is the reason I first knew of My Dinner with Andre.
Okay.
Because I watched that movie in my family obsessively, because if you're a theater kid, you watch Waiting for Guffman. And I think that's why I looked up and watched My Dinner with Andre, because I wanted to know what Corky was talking about. Different Corky. For everyone listening. Anywho, so that's the play on the title, and we'll see as we go through.
So the opening song is the very famous He's a Rebel, accredited to the Crystals. But I found out that it is not the Crystals. It is actually a band called The Blossoms.
The Blossoms.
Now, before I go into the history, which is fascinating, of why this happened, do you know who the lead singer of The Blossoms was? Jessie.
I mean, I'm on my computer right now, so I could tell you, but I'll let you say it.
Okay.
I had it pulled up.
Damn, thought I was going to be able to surprise you.
I wasn't sure who was going to do the song.
Damn, Jesse, stop being prepared.
I do my best.
So, the lead singer of the Crystals was Darlene Love.
Indeed.
Now, the original Blossoms were Darlene Love, Vanita James, and Jean King. They were the first black background studio singer artists. And before that, as Bette Midler in this wonderful documentary about backup singers 20 Feet from Stardom.
It's so good.
It's so good. Said that before that, they were tasteful white girls as backup singers. Darlene Love said that they would refer to them as readers. They could read the music, but they couldn't do the music without it, which meant they really didn't have a lot of soul or fun or rhythm to it. They just sort of were doing what was on the page. And so this was very new. Now, the Blossoms were about 15 at the time, which is crazy. But when this song was recorded, Darlene Love said that she knew that she wasn't going to get credit for it. The story behind it is that Phil Spector, she ended up working with for a very long time, Wall of Sound, wanted to beat someone else, which happened a lot, recording the same song.
Yes.
So Vicky Carr had recorded the song, but Phil could get it out faster because he already had everything within. He had his own company. So the Crystals were on tour, and they couldn't come in to record it. So he brought in the Blossoms. Now, the Blossoms, you may also know from Monster Mash and the Shoop Shoop song and Frank Sinatra, That's Life, Sam Cooke's Chain Gang. They've also worked with Elvis and Jackie Wilson and Aretha Franklin and Marvin Gaye. And, they were the sound of the 60s, really, particularly out of California. I mean, obviously we have some Motown people, but mostly out of California. But after He's a Rebel was a huge, huge hit, Darlene Love thought, well, this Phil Spector guy knows what he's doing. I'm going to sign with him. So then she recorded her first song, signed with him, thinking it was going to be her song, which is He's Sure the Boy I Love. And she didn't know until it was played on the radio, and it was attributed to the Crystals. And she was pissed.
Yeah.
But she had a contract. So Darlene Love was born Darlene Wright, and it was Phil Spector who actually changed her name to Love. And by the 1970s, she was finally free from her contract. And she signed with another label. And then that label sold her contract back to Phil Spector. She was really stuck. She said that, he was a big famous guy now, and it got to the point where he didn't want to be shown that he was wrong in front of other people. And it got so volatile that she walked out of a session and didn't see him for 20 years. And then what's sort of kind of amazing about Darlene Love's story is that she had a kid. She had to make money, so she started cleaning houses. And funny enough, I first heard about this story because it's fictionalized a bit in the film Made to Order with Ali Sheedy.
That's what I thought of the second you said that.
Right? And what's interesting about that is that Mary Clayton plays sort of a version of her as a maid who used to be a singer and then gets sort of rediscovered. And Mary Clayton is in the 20 Feet from Stardom documentary as well, which is, very interesting. So she was kind of playing a version of herself. So one day, Darlene is listening to her very famous Christmas song, Christmas Baby Please Come Home, while she's cleaning someone's bathroom.
It's so messed up.
And she thought, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. She moved to New York, and she said that, after a series of things, her career really picked up. But what really did it was in 1986, when she went on David Letterman because of Paul Schaefer and sang Christmas Baby Please Come Home, and did it as a tradition almost every Christmas until he retired.
Yep. It's an incredible story, and it's a part of history that I think gets overlooked a lot.
It does.
And I think it's just...
And I had always heard, obviously because of that movie and just hearing about Darlene Love, I love Darlene Love. Her voice is so distinct and special, and so I think when I heard that, I thought, oh, the Crystals must have been this band that she was part of, because I didn't know a lot about this history, and then I knew she'd been overlooked. But I didn't realize how overlooked
and the fact that
been.
she didn't let that keep her down. It's incredible that she turned back around.
Yeah. Well, she gets royalties for this song now.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
That's the least that she could get.
Exactly. And in 2010, she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Bette Midler did the introduction. She almost, I think, cried during it. And there's actually a really great duet of He's Sure the Boy I Love on her album It's the Girls, which Mark Shaman, who did Sister Act, actually did the composing for, orchestration, I should say.
It's one of my favorite covers of that song, actually. Another fun thing about this song itself was, I love my trivia, and finding out that they took the lyric, he's a rebel and he'll never be any good, and borrowed that for the song Dentist from Little Shop of Horrors. When they say he's a dentist and he'll never be any good.
Yeah, totally.
And I was like, that's when I was like, oh yeah, that's why that sounds so familiar to me. And the other, talking about this history, is the fact that if you know Little Shop of Horrors, the backup girls are a play on the 60s girl groups. And specifically they are named Crystal, Ronette, and Chiffon.
Well, quickly before we go into the episode, we have some thoughts from Steve.
Indeed.
And something really interesting, sort of, referencing his interview with us. And definitely go back and listen to that, guys, if you haven't listened to it. It's not just about season 1. It's about, everything. It's a great interview. Is that at first they were really unsure about, here are people who have everything. But deep down, they're very insecure and flawed people, even though they're very successful. The biggest flaw for Murphy is her ego.
Absolutely.
Which I absolutely agree with. and this was something interesting. He said that Murphy thinks of herself as incredibly honest, self-aware, and not at all petty.
Oh, sure.
And so having to confront that truth is very painful for her. And they really love the idea of someone as beautiful as Murphy saying that looks aren't important. Even though, and this is not Steve, this is me, it is. She is always attracted to men who are extremely handsome.
Yep.
That's her type.
Well, and I think that there's something that we see throughout this where there are moments where I think she's very proud of herself for being attracted to somebody who isn't.
Yeah, she is. That's an interesting part of the episode that we're going to talk about.
Like, oh, aren't you just doing a service?
And then to have it be that it wasn't that, he is unattractive, is that he's unattractive on the inside. He's, Steve said it, insufferable, champagne-swilling, handsy boob.
He is the boob.
Yeah. So this is actually an episode that the two of them did pitch as opposed to being assigned something. And, I think sometimes it's
cool.
Both ways. So we have one of our montages with music and all of these scientists. We have Albert Einstein. We have John Nash, Carl Sagan, and then the funny ones.
Yes.
Fred McMurray as the absent-minded professor from 1961. Some people might know it as Flubber because that was the remake.
The remake with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I like the fact that we go from actual nerds and it slowly turns into like these caricatures.
Yeah.
Over
Which
throughout
I feel like
this
they're
montage.
Good. It's
yeah.
like they do the real, and then the joke.
Like, and this is what we really think.
And then I wasn't sure, but Jesse thinks that I am a little right here, is that it's Colin Clave as Frankenstein from the famous Frankenstein film. And then is that Filbert?
I think it's Filbert. Yeah.
Filbert? Okay.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah. Colin Clave or Clive, we're actually not sure, as Frankenstein, and Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. And then just Dr. Frankenstein looking up at the machine that's going to reanimate the monster. As I was watching, I thought at first that John Nash might be Alan Turing. And then, of course, I went, no, not at this time. Not in 1989, probably. Unfortunately, he wasn't getting the recognition that he should. But I was surprised that Stephen Hawking wasn't in it. And then I looked it up and realized, A Brief History of Time came out in 88.
Well, actually, I would also say, but for different reasons as well, both of those men were not notable for being a cliche nerd, where that was in the way. Alan Turing was sentenced for being a gay man and basically tortured by his country and wasn't forgiven by that point. And then Stephen Hawking, even if A Brief History of Time had come out, what made him in this very superficial way uninteresting was a chronic illness that hurt him in a way. So it wouldn't be funny.
So funny. You're totally right. And I was thinking of it just like, these are just scientists. But you're right, there's more of a layer to it.
Yeah, they're making these are nerds.
These are nerds, yeah.
And those two would be, those are a different, unwelcome joke, I think.
Yes, it would be. You are correct. So I guess I'm glad that wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm actually, now that you say that, I'm like, I'm really glad they weren't included. Well done,
But that's what I was thinking while I was watching it. But now I guess I wasn't seeing it from the nerd point of view.
So we open on the FYI offices. We're in the bullpen, and Frank is on the phone, and he seems a little upset. He's frustrated and talking to somebody on the phone. It appears it's a friend who can't make a game that evening, and they really need him. It's a poker game. It's a poker game. And he then pauses and goes, well, how far apart are the contractions? Which gets a big laugh. And then his response, Frank, is, I think she's just fat, Dave, and looking for attention. Dave? Clearly gets hung up on.
Not a good joke, Frank.
Frank is a bit of a popular boy bully in this episode.
He is.
Frank. And Jim enters. And you see Frank do this little like bing. And he's like, Jim, my man. And he wonders if Jim needs to do something while Doris is in L.A., which I find very interesting because
Me too.
I think the audience up until this point has assumed that Doris is a housewife. So what is Doris doing in L.A.? And it clearly isn't a common thing.
It's not a common thing. LA to me, I mean, she could have family in LA. She
Sure.
doesn't seem like an LA kind of person. But I did think of that too. When you mention a big city, the impression is for a job.
Exactly. Like Doris is in LA versus Doris is out west or Doris is in California. Like saying LA makes it seem like she's there for the business.
And maybe this was an idea that they had and then they changed it because we've never heard of Doris having a job.
No, I just love that. I'm like, what is Doris doing? Why is Doris, like, Doris isn't just out of town. Doris is in LA.
Yeah, no, that really, that I'm so glad that also pinged you as well as it pinged me.
I was like, we haven't really thought about Doris having a life outside of her household.
Yeah.
So go, Doris, whatever you're doing. And he's like, hey, so, you're alone at home. You should come to my game. Clearly self-serving. And Jim says, I'm enjoying my time alone. It's been a long time since I've been a bachelor, and I intend to take full advantage of it. Last night, I ate a sandwich in bed.
Wild man.
Yes, I love Frank. You wild man. And Jim does this little nod, which is kind of like his dance, where his nod is like really fast and quick, and he like blinks like a crazy man, but he's like really proud of himself for being crazy.
So if I may, this whole section is interesting to me because I don't think of Murphy Brown as being a sitcom that has a B plot.
I know.
And I was trying to think if they ever did a B plot ever again, and I don't think they did, or maybe it's just because, again, the show is not known for having a B plot. I mean, even Joe mentioned that Candace had so much to do and so much dialogue. And Steve mentioned in our interview with him that there wasn't, I think, until season 3 that there wasn't a scene with Candace in it. Because there really aren't B plots on this show. And I wonder if they realized that's just the drive of the show, that everything tends to revolve around the one plot mostly.
It does. I mean, we had a little bit with like Miles getting a date and that kind of stuff, but it's all part of the larger.
Yeah.
And this isn't.
It isn't. This is an absolute classic sitcom B plot.
It is. And so something that Steve also shared with us was talking about the stuff that they gave to the gang. In the background, he said, I love the stuff we gave Miles, Corky, and Frank to do, and Murphy's trying to deal with Victor in the office. And he talks about how they have some great Three Stooges moments of physical comedy. And that's one of my favorite things that they keep doing is like the three of them where Corky looks like the exhausted mom dealing with the two boys who are messing with each other and the slaps that happen a little later that we'll talk about. And actually, I'm so excited because I wrote this in my notes, skipping ahead a little bit, Steve says, and I just noticed and loved how Faith invades Murphy's space and gets close to her face when trying to get dirt on her romantic life. Because I have that Faith like leads with her chin and her jaw.
Always.
It's amazing. And just the B plot of Jim just trying to get a night alone at home with his book. He says it's actually based on a British play called Butley. Both Gary and I had seen on Broadway in our New York days. In it, Alan Bates was a divorced, alcoholic, and possibly gay literature professor whose life is falling apart. The whole play takes place in one night. All he wants to do is be left alone to listen to a recording of, I think, Wagner's opera Parsifal. But people keep coming to the door or calling on the phone, and he's forced to deal with a world he wishes would just go away.
I find it interesting that from talking to Steve, it sounds like as ex-actors, Gary and him were influenced a lot by other plays.
Exactly.
Either historically or just having seen them. And I think that's so interesting. And I wonder if that is because they come from an acting background or maybe other writers just haven't mentioned other things that they were influenced in. But we keep hearing that a lot from a lot of their ideas.
Well, I also appreciate that they're coming from this place of they're really looking at the motivations and this like inner life in the supporting characters creating this beeline. I also, for me, it encourages something that I talk about with fellow writers a lot about the concept that there are only 2 or 3 stories in the world.
Yeah.
And therefore we're always influenced by different things we see and experience and how they told the story this way versus how I would tell the story this way. And I just appreciate that he has those thoughts on what the gang is doing in the background this whole time because they're really not involved with Murphy and Victor's experience.
No.
And so they have their own little drama that's happening in the background.
Yeah. And as we talked about before, eventually they do get the sense that when the gang sort of works as a little clump, as you know, interacting with that plot is when they are really at their best.
Oh, they're amazing in this.
Yeah.
It's so funny. So Jim is trying to decline Frank, and he says, tonight I'm making sloppy joes, then I'm going to pour myself a brandy, sit by the fire and read Mickey Spillane, which is the most boring thing he could be reading.
Yes, but it makes sense. Like he
It
likes
makes total sense.
He likes spy detective novel stuff, which we will find out, right? That's the kind of stuff he likes.
That's his novel, man.
Noir.
Noir. And Frank's like, no, you're a newsman with a wife out of town. You shouldn't sit at home alone. You should come play poker. And Jim gets very serious and says he isn't going back until Frank gets a door for his bathroom.
Yes. So I don't think that Frank actually gets furniture until like about season 4 or 5.
Is that
when
one girlfriend?
That one girlfriend, yeah. Who,
Like wifes him up a little?
Yeah. They become like this Italian couple.
Yeah, I feel like Frank just has a futon that he's had for a really long time.
Yeah, I feel like in one episode he just has like a folding chair. No, a beach chair.
Yeah.
He's just sitting on a beach chair.
Makes me think of an episode of Queer Eye I just watched where this guy has just like picnic furniture.
Let's hope that Frank has furniture now.
Oh, I think Frank has furniture now.
I think he has furniture now.
Frank does like the finer things, so I feel like maybe he's settled a little bit. Yeah. As much as he can. So Jim says he's been waiting a long time to read his book, but Frank goes, Frank needs him and guilts Jim. So Jim says, yes, this is the story of Jim's life in this episode, is he's constantly guilted. He says, fine, he can read the book tomorrow night. And then Frank asks him to bring cash this time because everyone hates checks.
There's a lot of check jokes.
So many check jokes. So the elevators are open. Elevator doors open. And it's Murphy. And she's leaning, looking quite exasperated. I feel like you're probably going to want to talk about this outfit.
Oh, how did you know?
Oh, Lauren, I know you.
Love this outfit. It's sort of a cream rose pantsuit with a tie jackety suit thing. Man, she can pull off pale colors. I look dead.
I hate a pastel, and she looks good.
Yeah, sort of the skin tone with her hair. Yeah, this is a big thumbs up from Lauren.
Yeah, it's a thumbs up from Jessie with the asterisk that I would never wear it, but somehow she looks amazing, and I'm jealous of it.
Same.
Though I do like a dusty rose. Murphy then turns, and there's a group of men standing in the elevator with her, looking a little sheepish already. And she demands to know which one of the men had his hand on her butt. And no one's making eye contact. She says, somebody saw him do it. Point him out. And they all lower their heads. And she goes, right, stick together, you gutless jellyfish.
I love this scene, but it reminds me of something that happened to me.
I mean, it reminds me of a lot of things that happened to me on the subway.
I was in an improv group and I leaned over to sign something and this guy thought it'd be funny to slap me in the ass, only I stood up too fast and he slapped me in the back and it hurt a lot and I screamed. And nobody would, I did the thing where I said, okay, who did that?
Somebody saw it.
Yeah. No one, including the women in the room, would point the person out. And I was treated as if, why am I making such a big deal about this? And I looked at the women to speak up for me, and none of them did.
I'm sure somebody's probably rolling their eyes and wanting us to just move past the joke of the moment. But as somebody who has also experienced being on a full subway, as somebody is trying to reach under my skirt
Oh,
while
God,
I'm on a
that's
subway,
much worse.
and then telling them to back off, moving a little bit away, them trying it again, telling them back off, having people watch it happen and nobody say anything or do anything. Life experience affects us in different ways.
Yeah.
And I would say that that particular moment, I know the joke is making fun of the men who won't stand up and are complicit and say you're all gutless jellyfish, but also you're all gutless jellyfish and be better.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I think it's something that is relative to today.
Yep. And just so you know, what you said is that's much worse. No, it isn't. It's not relative.
Thank you.
They're both awful situations and they shouldn't happen. So be better.
Yes.
Everyone. Don't be complicit. So then we find Murphy's new secretary, which we will talk about in a little while because Renee Watson-Johnson also has the best name ever, is brilliant. She is an African-American woman.
Yes.
Which, huzzah.
That's what I was
very excited to have an African-American woman with substantial work in this show.
It's a great little character. She does so well with it, and you know, we had someone on Twitter who was going through the show, and she said that it was really hard for her to continue the show now because it's so white. So this made me very happy that there was. Now, this is not saying that the show at the time was completely inclusive, because it wasn't, and there were very few African American characters characters of color. But it was really nice to see. Oh, great! Okay, here's this really great part.
I think something that is something I'm passionate about bringing to the forefront is intersectional feminism. I think it's important especially as women who are not of color, for us to
Agreed.
expect more and not just talk about our section of feminism, but include them all. I think something that can be troublesome for people is worrying that the amount of Motown was an appropriation by a white lead. And I think it's important for us to celebrate those moments when it did. And while we love the show and we respect and we know how much progress it did make in various forms, we can always expect more. We can always ask for more.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we're looking forward to for this next revival.
Yeah,
Are those opportunities. But I think that and something we have talked about is that we actually want to hold off on talking about the Motown element until we can have someone of color also come in and talk with us about it, because otherwise we're just two white women talking about something that is not just ours.
Absolutely. But also why we want to highlight
Absolutely.
the singers and the writers and the
Whenever
people behind
possible.
the songs. Exactly. Like Darlene Love.
Oh, Darlene. So her secretary is a smoker. She is sitting there just puffing away, and Murphy says, "No, I told personnel no smokers." And she's
I love that she's, oh no.
Oh, no. I told personnel no smokers. And the secretary's like, no, I'm quitting. She promises. She says, this is my last one. And she picks up what is clearly an empty pack and shakes it to prove it's the last one. And Murphy says the desk smells like the backseat of an old cab, that she's disgusted. And the secretary says, no one else in the building wants me, but you're a smoker. I thought you would give me a chance, which I love. And you just see Murphy's good heart soften a little bit, and she says, well, okay, but if I see you light up, you're out of here. And the secretary does this great thing of going, no, she's quitting, see? And she picks up this tray full of cigarette butts, and she's like coveting it. She's holding it really close, like she doesn't want to let it go, and she's trying to puff it out, and they're covered with like lipstick, and they're just smashed together, and it looks like this little bouquet of disgusting cigarette butts that she's just holding near her as she keeps trying.
I love that you noticed the lipstick, because I was like, shout out to props.
Kudos, props. It is so specific, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's just so gross. There's so many of them in there, and she's just holding it like the person just doesn't want to let it go.
The comic bits that she does are so great.
She's hysterical. And so Murphy just kind of turns around with acceptance, says, someone in personnel hates me.
Yep.
And she walks over to the coffee station in the bullpen, and Frank does this, whoa, ho, ho, some serious perfume. And he wants to know if she has a lunch date or maybe an afternoon rendezvous. And Murphy says it's nothing, says it's from a magazine, which,
yeah, right.
Man, I used to collect those magazine perfume pages because I thought someday I would grow up and be somebody who like really understood perfume. So I would save the little pages, and I would put them actually, when I was a kid, I would put them in my drawers as like a freshener.
Aww.
I would put them in the drawers so that all my clothes smelled like different perfumes.
I love that.
It didn't work out as well as I thought. Now I use Irish Spring.
So you don't have a signature scent?
I do. I just don't. I don't like spending money on that stuff. So I have one from J. Malone that I love. I feel like it's a generational thing. My mother was not a huge perfume person, so I was never around the ritual of perfume. There is, and I'm sorry to those that I offend with this comment, but there is some, I call it the rich woman's perfume, that I smell almost exclusively uptown in New York City.
What is it?
I don't know. I think it might be Chanel No. 5, but I've never tested it.
Smell me. I smell like Chanel.
I can't smell it, so I don't think it's that one. There's one, and it might just be the science, the actual, like the people who eat cilantro and think it tastes like soap. There is one that I smell that to me smells like mothballs, and all of these rich old ladies in New York City wear it.
I don't think it's Givenchy then.
And I hate it so much, and they waft by.
Is it very flowery?
No, it smells like mothballs.
Okay.
It is musky.
I'm gonna figure this out.
Okay, cool. You let me know.
We'll do
It
a
might
poll.
just be my nose. Anyway, Murphy, I hear you on the magazine perfume.
I'm a Chanel girl, although I have eau de toilette because it's cheaper. And my mother usually gets it for my birthday every 3 years or so because I almost use it almost every day, and it lasts.
Does it? Because I don't notice it 30 seconds after it's been used.
On me, or you mean in general?
Anyone.
Oh, okay. So you can't smell me.
I can't.
Okay. I mean, I love the smell of Chanel. I also sometimes mix it with a little coconut body butter to give it a little different scent.
Yep, my mom didn't do that.
Oh, no, I made that up.
Oh yeah, no, this was not my female line. So right after she tries to pass Frank off on this, Corky comes over and says, "Ooh, someone is wearing Rive Gauche perfume and went a little overboard with the mousse this morning. Who is he, Murphy? Tell me everything." And this is when she leans in with that grit. She leads with her teeth. I love it. Mm-hmm. So yes, the Rive Gauche perfume that's Yves Saint Laurent.
It is, yes.
Yes. I do know some things.
I had never heard of it.
It's just one of my favorite perfumes to say, which I learned it might have been Murphy. I don't know. I learned it somewhere and I knew how to pronounce it.
It's from 1971. Although it was composed in 1969, it was launched in 71. So I'm going to guess it's a very 70s of our mother's generation kind of a thing.
Composed like a scent symphony.
Like Polo. Like, I think of Polo, I think of my dad.
Oh, nice. I think of Old Spice.
But I like saying Givenchy.
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 Yeah.
Rive gauche.
So finally, Murphy can't shrug off their questions. She says she's waiting for Dr. Victor Rudman, one of the most brilliant minds in the world today. He's probably going to win the Nobel Prize in Physics. Corky, of course, is like, well, he must be really cute. Really, really cute, too. Isn't he, Murphy? Which I think it's an interesting choice with Corky that they keep having her use words like cute instead of handsome. They age her down with those comments.
She repeats words a lot. Really, really cute. Mm-hmm. She says she does those things a lot.
It's very youthful. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
childish. It's very youthful.
Yes.
Murphy says she has no idea what he looks like. They only talked on the phone. And Frank says that he has trouble seeing her with a guy with a clip-on bow tie with thousands of pens in his pocket, and then does a shrug.
Stereotype much.
Oh my gosh, we have to talk about the stereotype. And Corky says, I have to agree, just because you've entered that category of mature woman doesn't mean you should throw yourself at a dork.
That really hurt me.
As somebody who loves dorks, it has nothing to do with your age. Nor has anything to do with settling, because they are lovely people.
I like nerds.
I love my nerdy little dorks. And she says Victor Rudman may be a genius, but there's no reason he has to be a dork. And then Miles swoops in with, I'm a little worried about this dork interview.
To which I wrote, Miles is so horrible. Wouldn't he have been a dork in school? Really?
I wrote in all caps, Miles is compensating. Like, Miles, there is no way that you were not that kid. It's just...
No, there's no...
He still
no
is
way.
that kid.
Yes.
And just in his dad's coat. And in his dad's jacket. And the thing that I see is that now that he's doing the classic thing where now that he's out of where he was a kid, as soon as you're away from the people who knew you when, now he's trying to remake his image as if he wasn't that dork.
Sure.
And of course we have cool guy Frank, who's like almost the bully.
Yeah, and they're
in this.
chummy.
They're chumming up. So of course he's going to say anything he can to get Frank to laugh at him, which of course he gets the entire episode. But Miles, come on, stick up for your fellow geek, man. He's worried about a man who probably wears his pants up to his armpits, wasting 20 minutes of my airtime, which is it's so egocentric. 20 minutes of my airtime lecturing us on things we don't care about, and the rest of the time has his finger up his nose. Oh, it's just... And Murphy's defends saying he's going to win the Nobel Prize for fractals, which are self-similar, non-Euclidean geometrical objects that occur in nature. And Miles just says, this one's a nose picker for sure. She says he's a modern Einstein. She wants to get inside his mind of a genius and what makes him different from all of us. To which Miles replies with, he doesn't use Kleenex. Ugh. Frank laughs with him in this way that I wrote, this is why Miles is doing it. The way that Frank chums with him. He immediately kind of like bends over and like leg slapping, chumming together. I'm like, this is exactly why Miles is acting like this. And Corky glares at them. And Corky, in this kind of Three Stooge thing, is absolutely becoming the pretty girl from high school who was nice to everybody.
Oh, yeah.
She really is, where she's like, that's not okay. Like, constantly kind of just trying to stop them from being
She would be
children.
that person.
She is. That's why she was a beauty queen.
She wouldn't hang out with them, though.
No, but she was very nice.
Because I had a girl like that.
Mm-hmm. Murphy says she talked to him on the phone and that he is brilliant and eloquent and passionate about his work. I'm really looking forward to meeting this guy. Elevator door opens, and there are two guys on it. The first one that gets off is a very tall, normal-looking, handsome man.
Murphy's type.
Kind
of bland.
Corky tells Murphy to start picking out her China pattern as if like now like team women being nice to men is going to win this one. Mm-hmm. Murphy clearly is like, yeah, this is going to be good. I'm going to show them. So she introduces herself very formally. And the guy says, oh, that's nice to meet you. I'm looking for the graphic department. And Corky in the background looks so disappointed for their cause. Mm-hmm. You just see her kind of look over because clearly the dudes are doing something. But you just see Corky. Murphy, I was actually kind of surprised, is very, very chill with her response. She says, it's one floor up. Have a pleasant day. Then turns around and says, what do I look like? An info booth? An information booth?
Famous face.
Yeah. But I was actually kind of surprised that she didn't just shoot him down. For some reason, like her saying, it's one floor up. Have a pleasant day. And then turn around and do that was very interesting to me because I think she was just holding herself together. Mm-hmm. Frank goes, aw, disappointed. And she says, I'm just trying to do my job, which I appreciate, as she starts walking to her office. And then the other man who we've seen in the background, looks a little older, looks a little stranger. Everybody who's watching knows it's absolutely him. Walks up, and Victor gets off the elevator and introduces himself to Murphy. And he is exactly the nerd everyone was expecting.
Entrance applause.
And he gets entrance applause because it is Mr. Buck Henry.
The only other person to get entrance applause was Colleen Dewhurst. So should we pause and talk about
Let's
Buck
talk
Henry?
about Buck.
Okay. So, Mr. Buck Henry, playing Mr. Victor Rudman, the legendary Buck Henry. You may know him from Saturday Night Live, and so therefore he's friends with Candace, which is what helped get him on the show. But he's also a great writer as well as being an actor. So he wrote The Graduate. He also was nominated twice for Academy Award, once for The Graduate and the second time in 1979 for co-directing Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty. He co-created Get Smart with Mel Brooks. He is part of the SNL Five Timers Club.
More than 5 times.
You also may know him as Liz Lemon's father on 30 Rock. He adapted as a writer The Owl and the Pussycat. He wrote What's Up Doc, Catch-22, Protocol, which I loved as a kid. It's a Goldie Hawn movie. To Die For, also a really great movie, which I did not realize that he had written. But he's been in Defending Your Life and Grumpy Old Men, and he's a legend.
There's a reason he got applause, everybody.
Yeah. Steve had some great things to say about Buck. They admired him as a writer, obviously, for all those, sort of reasons. He said by this point in the first season, the show was getting critical success. So attracting people who didn't normally do television to be guest stars is getting a little bit easier. But obviously, being friends with Candace really helped. He said also, just in terms of the character, that they were both had read an article on fractals and thought it was really interesting. And they're both very interested in science and wanted a scientist to really, be interesting and be this character be a brilliant thinker, and that they gave him a lot of dialogue, and he really said it very, sort of effortlessly. He loved at the end, which we'll get to, when he really just sort of, cut loose.
So while they are talking and she's greeting him, also I wanted to say that I have, even though I'm somebody who needs glasses, I wear my contacts a lot. I often get put in glasses on stage.
Interesting.
I often play myself as a geek girl, so they want to show. Apparently, you can't be smart unless you have glasses on.
Of course.
Obviously. And I just want to say, I actually have a pair of stage frames that are what he is wearing in this episode. Because apparently now they are hipsters in style. I just want to be like, I have those glasses. While they are talking and greeting each other, Miles and Frank are doing their best nerd impressions behind his back that Murphy can see.
They're so horrible.
They're the worst. And of course, Corky is looking very disappointed in them and very annoyed in her classy way. Victor says that, after their phone calls, he feels like he knows her, which I love the idea that they had this connection already.
I think it's very important to show that she does find him charming.
She does, absolutely. She introduces him to everyone and does her Murphy thing where she's like, everyone, instead of Victor Rudman, she says, this is Victor Dorkman. And then she tries to correct herself and then just says it again.
Candace is really good when this stuff happens, when she accidentally says something and her head kind of bounces. She's like, Dorkman.
Oh, she just foot and mouth. Yeah. And so they go into her office. Do we want to talk a minute about the fact that this wouldn't work now?
Yes. So Steve brought up the idea that he didn't think back then it was even that plausible. I think it's a little plausible. Maybe she's trying not to know what he looks like. I don't know, but...
it would make sense if he had already won the Nobel Prize that she would have seen him.
That's true.
But he's up and coming.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense because he hasn't, quote unquote, proven himself to the world outside the scientific community yet.
Yeah. So I see his point, but I think it's not completely unplausible. But yeah, today this wouldn't work.
No.
You'd have to find another reason. He'd have to, a secret identity, or there was something that had to do with his character that he just didn't want to be known. He was just the egg on Twitter.
Exactly. He's just an egg on Twitter, y'all.
I hope people got that.
I hope so. Google it. You'll get it.
Yeah.
So they head away into their offices.
Yeah. So we cut to Miles and Jim are at the coffee island. So Miles, wants to hang out with Jim, two caballeros. But Jim's he's going to have a fire, drink a brandy, read Mickey Spillane, everything that he said, and he's going to be fine. But Miles kind of guilts him. He's the producer. He wants to be everyone's friend. And people, treat him differently, and he feels left out because he's the, kind of the boss. And Jim finally, goes, "Oh, okay. You know, and he has this really great moment, Miles, of insecurity, which is
Yeah.
lovely, which Steve felt that was an example of showing how much he and Gary love to write for Miles. And just the way that Grant does it was really sort of a gift that Grant has with comedy and that particular moments.
Because he adds the humanity in. He's not just a caricature.
Yeah, you know. So Jim relents, you know, and says yes. And apparently Miles cannot read Jim yet at all and decides to take him to the Laugh Factory to see Gallagher. No, they don't mention Gallagher by name. They say Smashing Watermelons.
Yeah,
But
that's Gallagher.
Back in 1989, my dad loved Gallagher. We watched him on Showtime all the time. I loved that as a little kid.
Yep. All you need is a mustache and some suspenders.
My friend did a commercial with him. He's apparently quite lovely.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So Jim is not very happy to see the Smashing Watermelons, and he's not amused.
It's not the best replacement for Jim's book.
No.
We'll put it that way.
Yeah. So Murphy's secretary is hiding smoking when Victor and Murphy come out of the office, and he's telling her this great story about Carl Sagan and that, you know, the two smart guys can't figure out 50% of the check. And she wishes she had a professor like him in college to show her how to make a stink bomb. Is very useful for someone like herself.
Well, and something Steve said was that he says, I love that when Victor comes out of Murphy's office, they've obviously had a great pre-show interview, and she's reminded of why she was so charmed during their previous phone calls. It's also a nod to a famous Taxi episode where Alex falls in love with somebody he's only met on the phone, and then he meets her and is dismayed that she's overweight. Which, if you guys are looking for a new show, the new show that came out, Dietland, deals with some of these things.
With our friend Jen.
With our friend Jen Ponton in
Yeah.
it. But I've read the book, and that is something that they talk about in that book a lot, where blind dates for someone who is not what you physically expected or wanted necessarily. But he says, I love that we gave him a successful appearance on FYI, spoiler for the later in the episode, where he perhaps surprisingly is able to convey the beauty and mystery of fractal equations.
Yeah.
And even though we poke fun at the idea of a nerd scientist, we both love science and wanted to show how fascinating it would be if explained properly.
So Murphy and Victor are at the elevator, charming, and, you know, goodbye. And he asks her out to dinner. And once Murphy realizes it's for a date, she says that she doesn't date anyone she's about to interview. In her reporter voice, by the way. And, you know, see you Wednesday on the air, you know, blah, blah, blah.
The gang behind her during this is the most Three Stooges. And I put Corky, they start out looking perplexed when he asks, then they look disturbed, and then they all end up, so Frank smacks Miles, who smacks Frank back because they're joking, and then Corky smacks Frank on the top of his head, like the exhausted mom.
No, they have some really great stuff in this.
Children.
And so they all think, oh, phew, close call, Murphy, you know, thinking of that idea. And she's like, what are you talking about? That's my policy. I don't date people I'm about to interview.
They're like, oh, convenient.
And, you know, Murphy wants them to know that the brain is a sexual organ, you know?
It is.
Yeah, he's funny and has an amazing intellect. And Miles says that he always looks forward to the swimsuit edition of Scientific America.
Oh, God.
Miles. And Murphy believes that women are capable of looking deeper. Now, Corky can't encourage Murphy to do this.
Well, she tries at first. She's like, yeah, girl. And then, but in good conscience.
Yeah, she would hope that they would get her looks and his brains. But what if she gets short-tempered kids who run like Jerry Lewis?
I mean, it's a consideration.
It is. So then Murphy goes back to her desk, and I'm thinking she knows what's going to happen, and she does this all on purpose, and it's brilliant.
So before she went away to the elevator, the way that the secretary was trying to hide her smoking was that she would keep her mouth closed, and then as Murphy walked by, she would use her index card to try and waft it in the other direction.
It's really great. I really wonder if it was in the script or she made all that business up. It's really great.
Yeah, she's a genius.
Yeah. So Murphy rattles off tons of things that she wants her to do. Well, she's hiding the smoke in her mouth. And in between little like moments, kind of like, you know, it comes out of her nose, and then like
so gross.
It's so gross. And I kept thinking, oh man, you are committing to this,
Right? She is
You are
killing
so
this.
committing to this. Murphy then goes into her office, or
Well, she
halfway
gives
to
her
her office.
like a full list of stuff to do.
Huge list of stuff
And
to do.
secretary's like,
Yeah. It's comic gold. And then Murphy goes towards her office, and the secretary thinks that, oh, she's okay, and she blows the smoke out. And then Murphy just sort of like comes back a bit with a big grin on her face and goes, one more thing, you're fired.
What I love is that the secretary's response go, whew, and then lights up.
That's great. It's so great. She's like, well, now I can just smoke like crazy because that doesn't mean anything.
So about Vernee Watson.
Let's talk about her.
Johnson, who played her, who currently is listed. I want to make sure. So her married name was Watson-Johnson. She is currently listed on IMDb as Vernee Watson because she was divorced from the Johnson. So I'm not really that was. I didn't mean that to be an innuendo.
You want to take it back, or you want to keep that in?
Let's just let that happen. Sorry, everybody. But I will say on her IMDb, it is Vernee Watson now. At the time, she was credited as Watson-Johnson. She born and raised in North Trenton, New Jersey.
Woohoo!
As Vernee Crystal Watson. She has an incredible IMDb page, everyone, and she has multiple things in post-production right now, including the Mandela Effect, which I'm super excited about.
She's in Grace and Frankie.
She's in Grace and Frankie. Her first credits are in 1970, which many people know her from many things, actually. She's probably best known either for, she had a recurring role on Welcome Back, Kotter as Verna Jean Williams, as Viola or Vi Smith on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which is, I think, where I first knew her.
Yeah, I feel like our generation will know her as Will Smith's mom.
Yeah. And she also was Dee Dee on Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, which makes me really happy. She has multiple shows where she has a multi-episode arc, including The Big Bang Theory, all the way back to Sister Sister. She did multiple soaps as well.
So she won a Daytime Emmy for General Hospital, Outstanding Special Guest Performer in a Drama Series in 2018.
Yeah. We also have thoughts from Steve about her, but I also want to say, interesting fact was in 2005, she was a witness at Michael Jackson's second case of child molestation.
Really?
Huh. Which I don't know for everyone. I didn't go that far into that research.
Sure.
I don't know who she was a witness for, but I just find that quite fascinating. So Steve has lovely thoughts about Vernee. So he says, watching the episode again, I thought it still played well, in large part due to Buck Henry and the wonderful Vernee Watson Johnson, who played Murphy's smoking secretary. I had met Vernee during my acting days when we were cast in one of the few commercial and critical failures in the careers of both Gene Hackman and Barbra Streisand, All Night Long. Hackman played an upper-level exec at a company like CVS or Rite Aid. He has a meltdown at a corporate meeting and is demoted to the night manager of a failing store, at which Vernee works as a cashier, and I was a board stock clerk. She gave a brilliant audition for our secretary, and I didn't have to sell her to Diane at all, and you can see in the episode she milks every moment perfectly. So fun fact, he didn't have to sell it to Diane because
she was the series regular on Diane's first sitcom, Foley Square. So she had an in.
She was great.
Yeah.
We already knew she was
And just
great.
as a reminder, if people haven't listened to our Origins episode, that was a show starring Margaret Cullen, and it was about a lawyer in Foley Square, New York. And she played her secretary, actually, so it might be a little bit of a wink.
She's nailing it. So we move ahead in the story to the broadcast. I wrote that Victor Redman is dressed like a 1970s department store mannequin.
I said he's dressed literally like the year 1973.
Nailing it. It's this like burnt red suit. It's got a polka dot themed tie with blue and pink. He has red and blue plaid pants. He has a white socks, white shirt, and brown loafers, and I love him.
It's almost like he went into the costume department of SNL.
He did.
From
It's
when he was on
amazing.
it.
It's like he just knew what to do. And I will say, color theory-wise, it all works. The patterns are exciting. As we find out later, he is a sucker for a pattern.
I just had a thought. Do you think any of it's from Kyle's outfit?
I really wondered, actually.
I should have paid more attention.
Or they pulled them. They probably pulled the items from the same places.
Yeah.
So he clearly has not upped his fashion game into the 1980s. We open on him and speaking during their interview, and he says the important thing is to keep yourself open to everything without judging or censoring. You never know where inspiration may come from. Which I think we should all think about, keeping our minds open without judging or censoring. And she asked for an example, and he says, a crap table in Atlantic City. Einstein said, I don't believe that God plays dice with the universe, which is fascinating. And he tells a story that he went back to his lab after playing craps, and he charted out patterns for random throws of dice. And he found that he could predict certain patterns. And Murphy asked, why not just go back to Atlantic City and get rich? And he said, the pattern works for millions of throws, not 5 or 10. And he has this really cute giggle at his own wit because he thinks it's hilarious. And he says, you can find patterns in things you think are random. And the reason this is important and why he's going to win the Nobel is that you could start finding patterns for hurricanes, for traffic jams, that fractals are the key to unlocking incredible mysteries. And what I love is the way he explains this. It's so easy to understand, and he's so charming in this interview that you understand why Murphy is taken with him. And she turns around and says this great line of, finding harmony in a chaotic world, the definition of genius.
Oh, Murph.
Oh, and you see, like, she says it in a way like he brought her harmony. Like, it's just, you hear this like breath of groundedness.
Well, she's like, told you guys.
Told you he's a genius.
Also rocking the pale colors.
Again, I have to say, very muted tones for broadcast.
Yes.
It's usually the opposite.
And that happens in the next episode, too, because we were talking and I went, oh, maybe we're wrong. But yeah, but, you know, she looks great in it.
She does.
The necklace also carries over into the next, from the first scene into the next episode.
I
as
love
well.
her scarf that she wears for the broadcast and how it kind of matches her skirt. The broadcast ends. Miles he comes over beaming and suddenly is not judging this man.
I love how Miles and the crew were like raptured. They're like, this is so interesting.
They're fascinating.
Yeah.
Jamie even says, thank you for that fascinating. You know, he says that in his closing, and you can tell it's sincere. It's not just a line that he's saying to close out the broadcast. Miles wants him to come back again when he wins the Nobel Prize. And Murphy says, oh, make sure if you do, ask for a limo next time. And he turns around with this confidence. He says, I'd prefer to negotiate a date with you.
Yeah,
I swooned a little bit. Like, that, it was good. It was a good line.
I think he's on the high.
He is, and I was into it. And he said, you know, now that and he gets a little nervous again. He says, now that the interview is over, I thought I'd try again. And what I love is that Frank is behind, Miles is behind Victor, and they both are listening and look so excited all of a sudden, as opposed to the other listening.
They're going to get her on that she's lying, that she really does care about how someone looks.
No, to me, they look excited.
Oh, okay.
Like, Miles looks actually invested. Like, he's smiling. Like, he's like, yeah.
Oh, I think that they're waiting to get her.
No.
Okay.
That's not what I see at all. Because Miles
I
looks
can see
genuinely... Because now he's into this guy who got him all these great ratings. And now he's like, what a catch.
Okay, maybe.
Is what I got from it. And she says she'd love to. He asked her about Saturday. He goes, gee, Saturday. It's American Film Museum's annual benefit dinner. And she's got this pause because everybody in the room is watching. And she's like, as it turns out, I don't have a date yet. Would you like to go with me? Before he can really even kind of properly answer, she goes, although I completely understand because it's a big showbiz thing and he might be uncomfortable, maybe we can plan something else.
Yeah, she doesn't want him to go.
No, she doesn't.
But she wants to look like
but she feels pressured.
She wants to show that she's a bigger person.
Yes. Which I'm confused by a little bit. I'm not sure I completely agree with that, because he's just validated everything she said about him.
But she's not attracted to him.
But before that didn't matter and nothing's changed yet. When she said, like, no, I absolutely would have gone on it, but it is my policy.
Oh, I think she's lying.
I'm not sure. I think she's lying when she says that earlier.
No, I think I think some of it might be subconscious that she doesn't know what she's doing, but I think that...
I think now the thing that makes it different is before I think she was being sincere, lacking self-awareness. I think before she genuinely was like, no, absolutely I'd go out with him, but I can't. In the same way that Frank is like, no, absolutely I'd like a wife, but she's leaving for Russia. And the second that Jim says, no, she wants to stay, then he's like, oh, in this one, now that she actually could go on a date with him, now the walls are closing in.
Yeah, because the truth
But I don't think she was lying before.
Okay. Again, I was saying subconscious. So right, maybe lying is the wrong word. But I think that she's lying to herself.
Oh, absolutely.
There you go.
But I think she's coming to this realization in the moment while also still liking him because he's validated her and she does think he's fascinating, but she's realizing a bad thing about herself, that she actually is that shallow.
And she doesn't want people to know that she's that shallow.
Yeah. And he says, no, it sounds like fun. I'd love to go. And she's like, great. And he says, I'll call you tomorrow. You tell me what time to pick you up. And he walks out. And as he's exiting, we pass Jim explaining to the crew that he has this book that he was planning to read tonight. And they all go, no, that's fine. They walk away and they're saying, no, see, he's a big time star. Why would he want to do anything with us? And of course, you see Jim just wilt inside from the guilt again and says, no, I'd love to go. And follows them out.
And we cut to the townhouse. Eldon, I need you. Oh, yes, she does. So Murphy walks out in this amazing red strapless dress with this red wrap.
I wrote, yowza, Murphy.
Steve says she looks spectacular.
Yeah. That hair, she looks like a lion.
Yeah. I think this is her dress. I think that I've seen her
in this dress?
In this dress in some, like at the Emmys or some publicity picture before Murphy Brown. I could be wrong, maybe in a similar dress. But that tends to happen on shows because
Yeah.
gowns are expensive.
Yeah.
And so you see it on The West Wing. You'll see Allison Janney wearing her Emmy dresses later on in the seasons. So I feel like this is a thing that happens.
It just fits her so well, and it looks so good.
Yeah.
If it wasn't her dress, I really hope she took it home.
Seriously, right?
So good. And those like tiered Art Deco earrings. There's like 3 tiers of this like gold kind of art.
I didn't notice the earrings. Again, not a gold
love it.
fan.
I hate gold, but I love those earrings.
That's true. You can appreciate it.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Eldon says that her voice cuts through the house like a buzzsaw.
Yep.
What if he was on a ladder? I could have been killed. So he sees what she's wearing, and he says that she brought out the heavy artillery.
She did.
Wants to know if she's expecting to get lucky. She needs help with her bracelet. That's why she needed him. So he helps her with the bracelet.
I was trying to remember why she needed it.
Yeah. And she wants to warn Eldon that the guy picking her up isn't usually the kind of man she usually dates. She doesn't want any comments. Eldon wants to know if he's missing something. Murphy says that he's smart. Murphy seems to think that she's, doing a good deed.
I'm so disappointed in Murphy.
Fine.
In
This is her
speech.
holier than thou, sort of up on a, he's going to remember this when he sits at his desk that he went out with this pretty famous lady. And it's like, oh, you will be so cut down off that high horse that you're on, Murphy.
Yeah, she says she thinks maybe a date with her will give him something to think about while he's at his desk saving the world.
Yeah. And that's
Like, wow, aren't you just an inspiration?
yeah, and that's when Eldon gets that he's a dork.
Doesn't she say something like, it's the least she can do?
Yeah. It's pretty bad.
Man, Gary and Steve just taking that ego out for a ride, man.
Because you got to take it up so that
You do.
when she finds out that he's this horrible
that
person,
she's a disappointment.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
she just gets cut down.
I love it. I love that they just took her up there because I'm like, oh, Murph.
I don't have it written here, but is this the one when Eldon says that some guys like bony chicks?
Yeah.
I forgot to write it down.
I was like, oh my. Which I love.
You're
I
not my type.
appreciate.
You're too bony.
I love it.
Yeah. So Victor arrives and he's wearing a black tux and Murphy is in shock. He looks
audience is
good.
in shock.
Yeah, and he's got a little red sort of, pocket square that matches Murphy's dress.
He looks great.
Yeah, he wanted a red brocade, but they were out. This is all they had in his size.
He's so disappointed because he can't have red brocade. Like, come on.
Yeah, he looks good by accident.
I know.
And apparently Eldon knows about fractals and Murphy just assumes that it's too complicated for him.
They're self-similar non-Euclidean geometrical objects that occur in nature,
He's done fractal art.
which is awesome.
Totally awesome.
I love any chance that we get to prove that Eldon is really smart.
He's super smart. At one point, Victor tells Murphy, this is a little too complicated for you, which is great. Taking her down after she assumed Eldon didn't know. And next time he's in town, they'll put some numbers through the computer and do some art and
Oh my God, my favorite line.
color me there.
Color me there.
And then he takes Murphy to the side. He's like, she'll be back with you in a nanosecond.
Nerds, I love it.
He just lets her know in private that, he'll be out by the time, she gets back. He knows she likes her privacy. This guy looks like a howler.
Eldon is my light in this episode. He's so good.
Well, one of my favorite lines in the future that he says is, getting it on a regular basis has not helped you. So maybe he thinks, she gets laid, she'll be nicer.
Yeah. So crazy. We get to the event. They're in just a hotel. Isn't the Grand Sheraton or something later? We find out what it is.
The Sheraton Grand.
The Sheraton Grand. We figure out later that it's a hotel. It's just some hotel hallway. But there's a gaggle of photogs, maybe paparazzi, but it looked like they're with the event. And they're like, hey, it's Murphy Brown. And they kind of just stand in the way.
I thought they were paparazzi.
The way that they were allowed and that she actually stood for them made me think that they're supposed to be there. Like they're supposed to be photographed.
That's
Also because
true.
they're not hiding very well.
That's true. But they're press. They're definitely
They're
press.
definitely there for the pictures. And she apologizes. She says, sorry, I know it's awkward, but it'll be over in a minute. And Victor's handling it very well. He says he doesn't mind. When they ask who he is, she's like, this is Victor Rudman. He's a physicist. And he says, R-U-D-M-A-N, Victor? And she's like, okay, we're done. And she starts to walk away. And he grabs her and pulls her back and says, we have time for just one more, don't we? And poses.
He's loving it.
He is loving it. And she kind of is confused and says, well, you handled that like a pro. And says, can't let things get to you when you want to have a good time. And they walk in and he has this like, wow. And he's just in love with this party that's in front of him. And she's like, oh, okay, well, let's go find our seat and sit down. And he proceeds to say, what do you want to do first? Work the room a little, find out who's here. Somebody said Cher was going to show. I love her.
This is what Buck Henry's really good at.
It's amazing. It's just like the running. I love her. And Murphy is perplexed. I think is probably the best word.
Can I also say, they're playing Ease on Down the Road from The Wiz.
They are. I wrote that down.
I went, what?
He's on. Yep, I love it. And then she says, oh, look, they're serving. Let's get to our table. She starts to walk away. And before they can, he swoops in to a serving girl passing by and grabs 2 full champagne flutes. Clearly has not picked up her history at all. Takes one. He's like, and one for the lady, and tries to offer it to her. And she says, no, she wants a club soda. So he proceeds to chug down the first one. And my least favorite thing that he does of all the things he does in this episode is he then turns to the serving gal and says, and here's a little something for your college fund, and stuffs cash down her neckline. This is when I was like, oh, yep, you're a boob. I don't like you. And he then turns to Murphy, says, here's looking at you, kid, and downs the second drink. And he does this thing where he goes, yes! And his whole body, I wrote, twitches with released repression.
Oh, body convulses.
Yep.
Almost. It's great.
But then he controls himself and just breathes. It's like, oh, okay, not this time yet. But you see the inner animal that's trying to get out.
Yeah. And then I think something interesting when we cut to the dance section, and when we talked to Barnett, we could ask him, because it's the only time that I've seen them do a handheld camera.
Yeah, when we get there. Yeah. It's a different view, and it definitely sets up what's going on. This is when Murphy tries again to use the serving to sit down. He grabs her to dance so they can work up an appetite for the food that's coming. And this is, when we get right into their shoulders and their faces with the handheld. And she says, just because you're out with a celebrity, you don't have to act any different to impress me. And he says, I'm not. And we find out that he goes to clubs, discos, whatever, every weekend. And he proceeds to go, we could all die tomorrow. Like I said in the interview, you need to live in the moment. Let the universe touch you. You've got to touch the universe. And we see Candace's face and she says, Victor, that's not the universe you're touching. And we're back to him being the same as all the men in that elevator.
This is such a great little connection. I love this so much. It might be my favorite structural thing in the episode.
I was like, he is just as bad as those gutless jellyfish at the beginning.
We cut to later on at the party. He's drinking way too much. She wants to talk about science with him. He talks about science all week. He wants to dance. She wanted to have a great conversation. She pulls him away so much he falls into her arms. Someone takes a picture of them sort of together because she's trying to get him to stay, and he wants to go have fun.
It's a great recurring thing they do at this section of the party where they get trapped in an awkward moment, but then they immediately just go ting for the picture.
He asks Corky to dance, and
calls her Slim.
She says that she's Amish, so she can't dance, but he grabs her anyway.
I'm sorry, can we talk about the purple dress?
It's great. It's a little poofy for me, but it's great. It's a great color.
Hey, we have established that it cannot be your style and you can still appreciate it.
Sure.
I love that dress, so I would like to talk about it.
Please.
It is a gorgeous, deep purple. It has long sleeves, yet also a big skirt. And it has this great neckline that is both low, but also structured and modest. I'm obsessed with this dress. I would probably never wear it because I don't have an event to wear it to. But for the event that they are at in the time period they are, she looks amazing.
I think you should just wear it in your home.
No, I can't think about wearing anything that heavy right now in this weather.
That's true. But I'm imagining you just sitting back.
Yes, I will
having
swan
a drink,
around.
Wearing some sneakers.
Lose a cat underneath that skirt.
I don't know about the Donald Duck underwear. Was it Donald Duck?
Yes. He says, what are those, Donald Duck panties? Oh, yeah. I hate that word.
Not a fan of the word panties?
I don't like it. Makes me feel like I'm 5.
A lot of people don't like it. Yeah, not a huge fan of it, but it doesn't make me cringe.
It just makes me feel like I'm 5. I don't know why.
Call it underwear.
Yeah.
Also, why does my underwear have to be called a different name than a man's underwear?
Thank you. That's my problem, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my older than 5 problem. Anyway.
Back to the story. So Frank sits down, and before he can even talk, Murphy's like, shut up, Frank.
And this is when she suddenly goes, he's lifting her over his head. What are those, Donald Duck panties?
Yes.
And then Miles stops by with his date.
His date, who Victor insults.
Well, because she's very much Miles' type. Got a big head of red curly hair.
Hello, 1989.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's this blue kind of spangly topped dress, very fitted, lovely. And he asks her if she's ever wanted to be, Victor asks, have you ever wanted to be a model? And she, very upset, says, I'm a lawyer with the ACLU. Which, yay, buddy. We're listening to this later than when we record this, but right now, I don't know what's going to be happening when this drops. But right now, I am very much in love with the ACLU and the work they are doing.
As am I.
So, yeah, girl. It's all I have in all caps. They walk away, and as they're walking away, he cries after Miles, remember, Miles, if you're going to love, wear the glove. And
He's such an ass.
he's such an ass. I hate him so much now, which I love. Like, kudos, Buck Henry, because I went from being like, oh, nerds, to, oh, you're just like everybody else. It doesn't matter. You can still be a tool. And he then turns to her and shares with Murphy that she's not what he expected. For a big network star, you're not a ride on the Ferris wheel, if you know what I'm saying. And that's when Murphy is done with him. And she proceeds to say, this has been the worst night of her life, and that includes the Bulgarian soccer team incident. And he's taught her one thing, which is...
You can't judge a book by its cover, but you can by its ugly plaid jacket.
Yes. And his response is, you know what I think you need? A sponge bath. You dork! It's amazing. And then, of course, someone takes her pictures and bing, smile.
So we cut to much, much later. Murphy's eating. Victor is dirty dancing with Marilyn Quayle.
Ding?
Ding.
Yeah?
I say ding.
Yeah.
She knows now how wrong she was. You know, she could have taken him to a burger at Phil's, but no, she had to prove a point. She'd take him to a big public place. So Jim tells her his Hemingway story. Just pretty much that, you know, Hemingway was his idol, and he dreamt of meeting him. And he met him in Spain, and it was a total fiasco. You know, he saw a wine bottle sort of sail by his head. There was Hemingway. And, you know, they chatted and they drank, and it sounds like it's going to be this sort of great hero story. But then he wanted him to go running with the bulls. But you know, due to a pulled hamstring, and I think Jim and scared of death.
Yep.
Yeah. Didn't want to do it. And Hemingway called him a pansy.
Oh. Hemingway was a notorious jerkwad.
Yes, we all know that. And he says, you know, he can still love his writing, even though he can't say much for the man, which is a big debate that we have nowadays.
Yep. Yeah. We're having a lot more trouble now being able to separate the art form from the person producing it.
Yes.
Steve has some great thoughts on
does.
this story. So Steve says that Murphy's scene with Jim at the end of the show is a lovely counterbalance to the wildness of Victor's party animal. It gives her the chance to admit she's been a victim of her own ego, and also to recognize that she put Victor on a pedestal because of his intellect and expected him to fit her own stereotypes. And Jim gets to express my conflicted feelings for Ernest Hemingway, whose writing I loved, and whose A Movable Feast is one of the few books I have read more than once and recommend to anyone who dreams of being an artist, but whose personal failings, a penchant for cruelty, misogyny, and anti-Semitism, make the man a lot harder to take. It also steals from a very funny Woody Allen, Oi, Another Fallen Idol, short story about a guy whose memoir of hanging out with Hemingway in the 1920s is filled with moments where it's clear to everyone but the oblivious writer that Hemingway thinks he's a stupid little pain in the ass. And we have talked about a way that this came in previously in my love of Midnight in Paris.
Yeah.
And again, when we talk about, you know, we can appreciate something even if it's not our taste. I have no problem with denouncing Hemingway, because while I recognize that his writing style is important to the art form and creating the spectrum of styles, I hate Hemingway and his writing and as a person. But I think that it's a really sad story for Jim. I think Jim is somebody who is probably not had a lot of those experiences in his life.
Yeah.
I think most people tend to live up to, because Jim is somebody, and I think the reason why he likes Hemingway is that his style is very simplistic. It is what you read on the page. It's not full of too much complicated metaphor or fantastical imagery. It is, this is what happened and this is how it happened. And I can see someone like Jim finding that incredibly attractive, and finding people like that. Like, I see them, I know what they are, this makes sense to me, I don't have to wonder about it. But I can see how somebody like Hemingway could disappoint him, because he writes like he's a jerk, and he is a jerk. And sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Which is something we've talked about when we interview the people from this show, how we are constantly so touched by the fact that everyone that we have met so far from this show has lived up to our expectations as far as their candor and class and general human nature.
I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of luck meeting my heroes.
I have
and them
not.
disappointing. And I've also sometimes found out later someone who I started to become a fan of and then sort of slowly just kind of was like, and found out later that they actually were a terrible person. So I don't know.
Living in New York, we meet a lot of our heroes.
We do,
We end up
yeah.
running into them in various forms, often as somebody in the service industry.
Oh, sorry.
And I will say that I've started to change my opinion about people based on almost solely on how they treat those they believe serve them.
I agree.
And I have had some very disappointing interactions. But I will say that I think one of the best conversations to come out of this episode is that we all on all sides of it set expectations for people that are often unrealistic. And
Sure.
I love the fact that
They're
Murphy's
human.
ego gets taken down because she was also put on a pedestal and an expectation that she didn't fulfill. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I love the idea that he assumed that she was going to drink champagne with him all night. And she was like, no. And he was like, oh, wet blanket. I love the fact that they both experienced that, but she's the one who took it to heart.
Yeah, he ends up dancing past her with a centerpiece on his head.
Such an idiot.
So Murphy asks Jim, what happened after Hemingway called him a pansy? I busted him in the snout. I love Jim.
I love Jim so much.
He's such a man's man.
Oh, yeah, you did, Jim.
And she goes, really? Excuse me. Oh, Victor.
And we raise our fists and
'Cause
love
she's
her
going to-
forever.
That's why he calls her Slugger.
Yes. Not that we condone violence.
No, but comedic off-screen violence
I
that's
love
implied.
comedic off-screen violence
We
for
didn't have
people
to
who
see
are
it.
little jerks.
Yeah. So please follow us on social media.
Indeed, please do.
We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, and we are on Twitter at Murphy Brown Pod.
That's also, if you add a .com to the end of that, that's our website.
Yeah, we have an FAQ. We have all kinds of great information about the book that we spoke about.
You can listen to the episode right there on the page.
Yes, you can.
Or you can click a link and go find, and it can direct you to your iTunes or your SoundCloud if you prefer those things.
If you subscribe to any of those things that we were on, and we were on everything, including Google Play and Stitcher, where you like to listen to podcasts, you can subscribe to us so that you don't have to keep going on the Twitter and being like, where's the episode? Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is it? Well, guess what? It's downloading to your phone right now.
Guess what? It's ready for your ear holes. Ready
Yeah,
and waiting.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
And then we also have links to our Spotify playlist, Murphy Brown Empowerment playlist, where you can listen to songs from and inspired by Murphy Brown.
And if you don't have Spotify or you have trouble finding it, there is a link to that on the website, so you can just pop right on over there. And if you'd like to chat with us, please feel free to send us an email at murphybrownpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, or talk to us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter as well. We welcome to hear your thoughts. And if you love the show, a free way to support us is to give us a review on iTunes.
Please do.
I know you're saying, Lauren, I really want to, but I don't have any sort of Apple product. Hey, friend next to me, can I borrow your phone? Can I change your profile name to my profile name or a name I made up? Thanks. And then you can leave us a review.
It's super fun
It is fun.
and clandestine.
Just remember to, delete that and bring so the person has their own profile.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or just take over their profile.
You could do that.
Not that I condone that.
No, not at all. So next episode we will be talking about is episode 18, Funny's Girl, and we'll see you next week.
For another edition of FYI.
The Murphy Brown Podcast.
Can we have like a ticker of every time I say indeed?